it's been horrible out there, hasn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't just take a day off, man, because it's we've been talking about this for now a while about the shoot gun situation, and
Yeah.
I think we have to have something about what's going on, man. Three mass shootings in 44 hours
Yeah. You know
in
what?
one
Let
state.
me let's go and get started. Let me introduce you.
Okay.
Because you know us, we get to talking, and next thing you
It
know,
is, yeah, right.
yeah. So all right, here we go. All right, we got Joseph Lee on board in Impact Hour. Um, just let everybody know this is being recorded because Joseph got a lot of stuff to take care of tomorrow, and I appreciate him let me know, hey, let's do it today because he got things to do. But I let him explain the reason because you know what? There's always a why, and everybody always want to know why. Well, we were just talking before I introduce him. He's talking about the mass shootings that's been going on. So I'll let you take it from there, Joseph.
Yeah, we this has been a theme that we've had. One of the main themes that we've had in this show is how are we going to address what's going on? What can we do to address what's going on in the country? And I just think that this is one of those times we have to talk about it, right? We've had three, mass shootings in less than 44 hours out in California. The narrative is not going away. We're not going to ignore it away. This is something that's serious, and we all. I think we've got a lot of listeners here, and I think we need to start writing in. Start writing your leaders. Demanding that instead of all these frivolous things that they're focusing on, we got some things that we're going to have to deal with in terms of the number of guns that are out here, legislation that's going to have meat to it in terms of how we can be more proactive. This gentleman wasn't on the radar. The first one, I think it was the Half Moon situation. He wasn't even, on the radar. But there are certain things that are happening over and over again. When somebody's disgruntled in the workplace, when somebody exhibits some type of homicidal or suicidal ideation, we're going to have to be more proactive in getting to these folks, getting those weapons off the street, maybe putting them in those weapons in some type of lockup until somebody can be evaluated and deemed, safe enough to have, a firearm, right? Or access to a semi-automatic weapon. But I think as it's now starting to come out, at least the, Half Moon, Bay situation, was a work situation.
Yeah.
And somebody was disgruntled. And then, we've got 11 deaths after that. Now we've got three mass shootings, two more shootings after that. I mean, what more are we going to have to do to get politicians off their butt to pass meaningful legislation and demand meaningful legislation across the country, across the board? It is not a Second Amendment right to have semi-automatic weapons. I don't know where we gotten confused or how long we're going to allow this to happen, but I think we're going to have to, really start writing, demanding, and not feeling like, oh, this is hopeless. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, there's nothing we can do about it if we're just going to do nothing about it, right? But we do need to start having those meaningful conversations. I've been doing trainings, briefings, conversations with school board members, with community leaders, with some law enforcement personnel about how we can make some of these changes. But it's going to take more than just a few. It's going to take a lot of folks to write and create that synergy and just say enough is enough to really start moving the ball the right way, moving the needle the right way.
You know, let me just cut in right quick. Let's call it for what it is. It's the Republicans. Let's just call it what it is. They are the ones that's holding back on this. The Democrats, the independents, everybody's on board to do this, but this Republican is married to the NRA. How can Abbott, with a stroke of a pen, turn around and say abortion is illegal, but then on the other hand, on a stroke of a pen for assault rifle, say he can't do that, it's unconstitutional? You can't have it both ways. So I'm calling for what it is. I'm saying that everybody else on board to do it except for the Republicans. I said it. It's out there.
Well, definitely. I think that you got to look at who is always the barrier, right? And I think definitely the Republican Party can take some of that, a large part of that blame. But you know what? And I said this before, we can't blame just politicians. We have to blame the culture. The
Yeah.
politicians are doing what the culture of this country is allowing. So until we get the wake up call down to the roots, the politicians are continue to play off of the fears, and it's to their benefit, right? Because they're getting paid through a lot of these lobbyists, a lot of these groups to keep things at the status quo. Well, the status quo is burning this country up. You know, the status quo is not allowing us to have the freedom that we are trying to have. The Second Amendment was to protect us from the government overtaking or mob rule or whatever you want to call it, or actually the government taking our freedoms, right? So we have the ability to defend ourselves against the government. The government isn't going into the schools and shooting. The government isn't going into these businesses and shooting. The government isn't doing all this destruction. It's the people that's doing these things. And these are people that are mentally ill, that have access to a weapon that they shouldn't have access to. So let's call it for what it is, and dismantle the ability for them to call on the Second Amendment and represent the Second Amendment to cover these so-called freedoms. This is a cancer. You know, the access to these weapons to mentally ill people, and whoever's allowing it, which I think in a lot of cases is the Republican Party. I agree that they are protecting folks and allowing for legislation to not have enough teeth. Look at the red flag laws. They're too late. You know, when you can by the time you act according to the red flag laws, it's too late. We have to be proactive in dealing with this situation and in this time out. And I think we're going to have to start seeing it. We've had, recently Robb Elementary. We've had all these school shootings. There's, I think, 39 school shootings, and 39 mass shootings, and we're in 2023, and we're still in January.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it going to take? Call the politicians. Tell them, look, your butt will not be there next time it comes around for an election if you don't start putting some meaningful legislation in place, marrying mental health and law enforcement, so that when you get some type of suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, or history of that, then we can be proactive. If somebody gets fired from a job or is disgruntled on a job, there should be some type of investigation. There should be some type of, check-in, say, hey, you know what, right now, for about 90 days, you need to be evaluated before you have access to a firearm. Is that unreasonable? No, it's common sense, right? But again, we said it on the show. Common sense is not common. We need to have some common sense legislation on the books that help protect these schools and help protect these communities. And look, once you have homicidal ideation, I don't think you ever need to have access to a gun. I'll just put it out there. There's a difference between suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. And sometimes they're married. I'm going to have to change this light. All of a sudden, maybe we're getting a divine message that hey, we need to start moving in this direction. What I'm saying?
Well, you touched a point when you started off that the guy who did the shootings at that dance studio was under the radar. Yes, that away, but was he under the radar with his friends and families? I think we brought this point up before, that we are the keeper of the castle too. If we know somebody out there is off balance and we're so afraid to let somebody else know that he's unstable, they might do something to him, but look what he's doing to everybody else. So we also have to step up our game when we see something like that, whether it's family, friends, or whatever, and we're not doing that.
We are the front line of defense. So when I say culture, that's exactly what I'm talking about. We have to protect ourselves and kind of get into the business of, checking on people and checking people that are not stable to make sure that we can do something. To see right now, let's just say, okay, we see somebody that might be unstable. We think that somebody might do something. If you call the police, a lot of times their hands are tied because the way the
Yeah.
laws are right now, they can't do anything until something is done. Well, that's kind of stupid, and it's too late. You need to be proactive. You don't
Right.
have, you don't have access to a firearm just because you want one. Okay, that just can't be. You gotta have some criteria. You have to be mentally stable, and we have to figure out some ways of protecting our people from ourselves, essentially. We don't have free reign to these military grade weapons just because of the Second Amendment. And if so, we're going to have to adjust the Second Amendment to be a little bit more, refined on who can have what weapons and why and when, right? And I think the when is key. Yeah, okay, if you're going to have access to these weapons, you need to be able to be at a certain mental state, and if certain things happen, then we need to have some people go and check some folks out, make sure that we're good, and maybe we need to relinquish some of these firearms. And I know that sounds completely ridiculous, right? But yeah, so did Jim Crow laws being overturned at some point. Some people thought that would never change. Well, it changed.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. It's not overtly legal to be a segregationalist, but there are ways that are trying to get around it. But it's now definitely illegal for Jim Crow, right? At least right now. I don't know. Certain folks in office, maybe they are going to try to bring that too back. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, we have to get aggressive with this particular piece of legislation, pieces of legislation to address these and soup up these red flag laws and allow the community the tools to protect itself from folks that maybe get unstable and have access to a firearm. Most of these guns are registered. The gun that this gentleman had out in California, the what's it called, the Half Moon situation, it was a registered weapon. So they know that this person was in possession of this weapon.
Right.
Right. If you become unstable, we've got to be helping intervene. And the police have the ability to place someone under an ED, which means that they have to be evaluated. While they're being evaluated, get that warrant, same time to go in and, make sure this person doesn't have access to lethal weapons.
But there's a catch-22 to that. I think official here in Bear County said that if they're not evaluated in a time period, they can let them go and they get their weapon back.
Exactly. That's why I think it's key that we introduce some legislation where while a person is being evaluated, when they're released, there should be a cool down period, for them to have access to their weapons. And that's introductory, it should be about 90 days, I think.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the interventions that are in place are holding, right? A person gets in, gets evaluated, they're stable right now. But if they're playing a game and, just trying to play, get out and get to their firearm, it shouldn't be there.
Let me ask you something. With that plan, I'm going to play politics a little bit.
Right.
So when they come together and they do a budget for the next following year, I have never seen a budget being introduced for mental health and what we're talking about right now. My personal opinion, it should be a budget for that. So they can have somebody on hand 24 hours if something happens. To be called in. Like you get a phone call that'll come in if a crisis happened and you're up and you're gone. You're taking care of business. Now, that's on the private side of it, sector. What about the clowns in politics? How come we can't do that? It sounds too simple,
Well, I think if I want to make sure you understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is just like for crisis calls, if something happens, so we can go and, part of what I do is represent EAPs. And I go out when there's a death or a situation that requires, a mental health professional to come out because there's been a trauma of some sort. We could have something like that when, somebody is possibly unstable, or we notice somebody be unstable. We already have the mechanism for that. That's law enforcement. It's right on the side of the vehicle, right? To serve and protect. Protect what? Life and property. That's what.
but they're not trained for mental health. They go ahead and start shooting people before
Well,
they
and
evaluate.
that's where that's where I say we need to have a marriage of mental health and law enforcement, right? We have to have people trained on how to, or have mental health professionals help train law enforcement on when it's a case of evaluation versus incarceration. Okay, maybe temporary incarceration into a mental health facility until they can go in and make sure that the house, has no lethal weapons in it. And you know what? This is already the practice. Okay, this isn't reinventing the wheel. When I place a person under ED, what's supposed to happen is you tell the parents or you tell the other family members, make sure the person has no access to lethal weapons when they get out. This is already what we do. That's just good practice. And this includes knives, medication, those things have to be away from this person because they are, we're just dealing with some instabilities.
Yeah.
If you're in a situation where somebody has expressed to someone that this person may be unstable, and we have some concrete reasons, because obviously the police can be abused too, right? If so you just don't like somebody, you say, oh, that person's crazy, or they're unstable, and you have a firearm. No, if a person has been fired from a job, if a person is going through a bad divorce, if a person has just lost loved ones and they're expressing suicidal, homicidal ideation, perhaps that's the time that you make sure that that person doesn't have access to lethal weapons. And you can voluntarily surrender your weapons, or family members that know and are willing to go on record saying, hey, I think Bob, Mary, Paul, whatever, just throwing names out there, needs to, not have access to those weapons. Now, the problem with that is when you put your neck out there, right? When that person calms down, maybe like, oh, okay, so you're the one that caused this, then, maybe there's some fear there. But we've got to make this so that anybody that has serious concern on the stability of someone can have a person evaluated and, temporarily, possibly have the weapons, kept from them. I think that would start to make a difference in this. And that's where we should be. We should have been that way back when Sandy Hook, back when Columbine was happening. That should have been the legislation that was going forward. It stalled because money's on the line. The NRA is very powerful, right? And they also pay the pockets, and they've linked this thing to get people confused that it's a right. And that's why things are so wrong right now. Money should not be the main maker of legislation. Morality and safety should be somewhere at the top there. And the reason it isn't is because the culture, the folks have allowed these people to get up into office and stay in office when they are doing, faulty legislation and allowing faulty legislation and just selling wolf tickets. Look, it's up to us to clear, a perfect example, right? 45 used to say all the time, we need to clean the swamp. But then he ended up being one of the biggest snakes in the swamp. So people know what to do. If you see that the person is not going to follow through and do what's needed, then we have to get those folks out of there. All right. And we have to demand legislation that makes sense. It's real simple, but it's not, right? It's not, it's real simple, but it's not for us right now. And I'm gonna have to do something with this blind here, man, because the divine intervention here is maybe telling us something, but I'm having problems seeing the screen. So let me do that real quick. I'll be right back.
All righty. All right, we got Joseph right there letting us know what's going on. And I'm telling you, it's crazy out there. Now, the guy in California who turned around and he shot up the dance hall, the dance studio, they found him later in a white van, and he killed himself. Which to me, that's a coward way out, because we never know what went on in his mind for him to do this.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect example. I'm saying the suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, sometimes those two things can go together. But we need to, somebody, I probably knew that there was a propensity, or maybe that there's a possibility that this would happen.
Yeah.
So we have to be able to empower those folks that are brave enough to come out and say, hey, I think there's a concern. I think we need to have this person checked out. And then the police have to have the ability to go in and protect us to a certain extent, you know, from those individuals, but correctly with mental health, you know, being able to give them some type of skill, some type of ability to go in and, you know, provide those services. Now, when you go in and do this, right, please, you know, law enforcement, there is a possibility that it's going to be a danger. If a person has got his heart set on doing something wrong, it's not like they're going to say, okay, you know, you're here, go ahead and let me surrender my weapons. If they have, you know, some nefarious intent, then, you know, maybe the police are going to be in danger. But that's kind of what we pay them to be, is in danger for us. That's the job description, right? So maybe we can be proactive. As soon as somebody is let go or fired or whatever the case may be, that just possibly needs to be the protocol, right? You're fired, law enforcement is notified, person is investigated for about 90 days. We're going to hold on to those weapons and make sure that you have the mental health support to help you through this time of transition.
You know what? You made a point right there, because I think the previous shootings at Walmart was an individual who was fired, and he went back for revenge.
I've been doing the research on this, Ron, and it's so repetitive. It's frustrating. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show, because I think this is one of the things that we're going to have to get the information out there. I challenge everybody out there to start investigating the commonalities of these shootings. There are patterns. The school shootings, they follow a pattern. The folks that come into these schools are usually folks that are introverted. They've been bullied. They've been socially, you know, socially isolated. And that's, you know, that's typically what you see, right? So then we have some intervention points. If that's the case, if this is the profile for this person, then we've got some social skills that we can teach. We've got some coping mechanisms that we can teach. We've got some resources that we can, you know, help to get to some of these youth before they keep going down that path. And that's what we have to, you know, start getting into the school system. What is it? What are the programs that are going to help and allow folks to know there's other options than grabbing a firearm and going back in and being heard? Most of the time, a lot of these kids want to be heard. They want to make a statement. And since they're not being heard, they want to go out with a bang. They want to go out and they want to make their statement so that you have to listen to them, right? So listen to them ahead of time. Listen to them ahead of time before they have to go get a gun, right? Mental illness has stages, but if we ignore the problem, we keep ignoring the problem, the problem is going to get big enough where you can't ignore it. And that's what we have right now.
You know, I'm glad you said that. Good segue in what I'm getting ready to say. That 6-year-old in Virginia, I read upon that and I was blown away what I read. He wrote a note to the teacher, wanted to set her on fire and watch her die. The teacher turned around and gave that note to the principal, I think, and they just brushed it off. Then later on, I was reading that this 6-year-old turned around and blocked the door so nobody could go out the classroom. I said, wait a minute. This kid is 6 years old and you let him do this. Then I started thinking, I said, where did he learn all this from being 6 years old? Home.
Yeah, it could be home, it could be video games, it could be social media, it could be a lot of different things. But the key point is he exhibited the homicidal ideation, but it wasn't taken seriously.
Exactly, because he was 6 years old.
And think about the situation that happened up in the Detroit area. The young man that went to the school, he exhibited suicidal ideation, wrote letters, did what he was, you know, put all that out there. It was recommended that he be evaluated. He went home, He had told his parents what he was going to do, or like, oh, Johnny, whatever his name, I don't get his name. You can look it up. You go just look up the shooting in out there in the Detroit area. That the parents did not make him go get evaluated. They allowed him to go back to school, and then he did the school shooting. Now, and so in this case, the parents were then also charged, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the answer. We have to require people to get involved and do the right thing. And when you have a recommendation, when a person exhibits or documents or puts in writing or even states they're going to hurt somebody or kill somebody or whatever the case may be, we can't just sit on that, right? You can't just pretend like that didn't happen. You got to act on that. And we have to give people the ability to act on that. And right now, the way the laws are set up, the red flag laws are set up, it's like, well, just because he said that, you have to, we're going to recommend that you take him in to be evaluated. Shouldn't be a recommendation. Should be a requirement. Right?
Yeah.
And in certain organizations I work with, when you tell me that you're going to kill someone, it's a mandated reporting situation. I have to make sure that this person gets evaluated, and then they will either be released or retained until they can become stable.
Well, see, I'm going back to this 6-year-old because the parents said they were supposed to start going to school with him and stay in class with him. They just didn't go that day. A red flag went up in my head right away. Why do the parents have to go to school to make sure whatever his name was behave itself? That's another red flag. He should have went to alternative school away from that. But again, this is not the first time that happened in this school. If you read up on it, they had quite a few incidents that happened in that school that's pushed under the rug. So now I think, if I'm right, the school is still closed. Last I heard, it was still shut down.
Which school is this?
The one in Virginia. I don't know the name of it right offhand.
Okay. I'm not sure. I hate to say it, man, but this shows how bad this is. I don't even remember which one you're talking about. It's been so many school shootings.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I've got so many in my head. I thought you were talking about Robb Elementary.
No, I thought the one in Virginia, the 6-year-old boy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So this is the most recent one, the 6-year-old boy still shut down. It's sad, man. 6 years old, first of all, to even come in with a gun to school. But I'll be honest with you. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest with you. It's not the first child that I have known and worked with personally or know of that has had to be placed into a facility because of serious homicidal ideation comments and tendencies. So it's definitely something happening in our culture. It's definitely something about how we're exposing our kids to certain things and not teaching those coping skills and not teaching those social skills. Dr. Kunjufu, I think it was, said that the conspiracy to destroy our children and talk about kids of color, in particular with Dr. Kunjufu, was talking about we need to get and instill in our kids between the 3rd and 4th grade those moral standards and those examples on what to follow. If dads aren't in the home, if families aren't solid or sound, or there isn't role models for that child to see, then they're going to find a role model. And part of those role models, unfortunately, look where you're looking at, right? Where are you looking for the role models? They're either athletes or entertainers. Most of the entertainers in the kids of color are usually hip hop artists. And look at, well, in a lot of ways, there's other people, but for the most part, the kids I talk to, the ones that are having deviant behavior and this, that, and the other, they're listening to not hip hop, but rap, because I don't want to disrespect hip hop. Hip hop is something different. Hip hop originally was talking about some positive things and just having fun. If you go back to the history of it, it was about just having a good time, doing some things that were fun. Then when it became rap, especially when you start introducing gangster rap, then it became something different. And now look at the demon that's been unleashed on the community. Look at what's happening to the rap artists. How many rap artists have been killed within the past couple of years?
Yep.
So think about it.
There was just one in Houston who was killed.
Yeah, well, the one in Houston, you talk about one of the Migos, and I can't think of his name right now,
Yeah.
was killed. And that was actually by accident, but it's just the culture, it's the violence, it's the embracing and of the violence. And it's just, it's a never ending cycle, right? So the first thing we can do to break the cycle is have some intelligent legislation when it comes to law enforcement. That's well, not law, it has intelligent legislation when it comes to gun control. Then we can start talking about, the mental health piece and marrying that together. But then we've got to deal with some other things in the country. This is a big problem, and we've got to do more than just talk about it. We got to start having our politicians introduce things that are going to make sense. But we've got to understand, okay, in our culture, where the problem is coming from and start to fix it. More role models in the home, more programs where kids can come and be kids in a safe environment, knowing that there's some people that are invested in their future and want to help them to get to that next level. And I know that sounds cliche, but those programs work.
Yeah.
Those programs work. I work with one of these programs here in the San Antonio area. I'm a Kappa. We have a guide right program. Very proud of what that guide right program accomplishes. But we need to have more programs like that. We need to be able to broaden that program to actually get into more schools that are undeserving. I can't do it all. And my brothers that are doing the work can't do it all. We have to have more people, more churches, more businesses get into these schools and these communities, show their face to these younger kids, let them know that it's some other role models other than rap artists and movie images of maladaptive and homicidal, sociopathic people.
Yeah.
What we see is what we become. So we gotta start addressing that. Looking at the games that are out right now. Look at the most popular games that are out right now. What the kids play. And I play some of these games. I'll be perfectly honest. I'm a gamer. I work with kids. I have to be able to operate and understand what's in their world. So I play some of these games. I am shocked at some of the kids that I hear on these it says mature, these games are for, adults. And I'm hearing grade school kids play games where people are being killed, shot, blown up, whatever you can imagine. And these kids are playing it. And the kids are cursing more than the adults.
Wow. I believe that.
And I'm like, I even said that, where's your mother at, man? Like, CPS need to be called on you and your mama. You know what I'm saying? What are you talking about?
That's their babysitter. Let's call it for what it is. That's their babysitter.
So if that's their babysitter, right? It's true. That is their babysitter in a lot of, and not just their babysitter, that's their role model. That's how they recreationally do things. So why are we so surprised when we have so many kids end up bringing a gun to school or start shooting in the community? If that's what they're doing all day long for recreation, what do you think is going to happen?
Just like that one, I think you was telling that one kid on a military base did something, and at the end of everything, he want to know, was he going to graduate with his class?
That was his comment to the federal judge.
So there's no logic in his thinking on that. He thought what he was doing, well, okay, I did it. I confessed, I did okay, I'm good.
I have to say all the time, there is no reset button on some of these choices that you make. It's really, sometimes I feel like when I work with the kids or work with youth, I'm just trying to protect them from themselves.
Yeah.
I'm trying to protect them from themselves. I'm so glad we didn't have these when we were teenagers. It's a mess, social media, what you can put out here. And you'd be surprised, parents that have kids with these cell phones, you better be like the CIA, the DEA, the FBI, the LAPD, the GRP, whatever PD you got in your community, you better be doing regular checks, because I guarantee you do some random checks over the next couple of months, there's gonna be some stuff that pop up. You're gonna be like, no. And I was one of those ones. I was talking to get my daughter a phone, but you know what? I use that as a little bit of a trick, because I want to know what her friends are talking about. I want to know what's going on. And I randomly grab the phone, and I want to see everything. Don't delete nothing. Don't touch nothing. Whatever. On the spot inspections. You know what I'm saying? And you better do it frequently.
And say,
Because
and what do kids say? I love when they say that. You violate my privacy. I looked around and said, you got a roof over your head? I pay for all this stuff. No, you have no privacy till you move out.
no, you got privacy when you go to the bathroom or when you change your clothes. Other than that, you don't have any.
Yep.
Your door don't shut unless I shut it somewhat because you're scared of some shadows or something out there. If you got little ones or whatever. But we got to go back to that old school. And I think it might sound like we're going off track, but I think if we had some of these folks that are doing all these shootings would have had parents like that, we wouldn't have the problems like this.
Amen to that.
So if you don't want your child to have to see a therapist like me, start invading that privacy, because privacy has to be paid for. If they don't have a job, they don't get privacy. Now, if anybody wants to, debate that with me or tell me that I'm wrong, first of all, look into it, back it up, give me some evidence, and we can talk about it. And then I'm going to let you know why I feel I'm right.
So I'm going to back up several years. We talk about privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when the law changed, it's like the kids had more power than the parents. A kid will call the police, say, da 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 da. The police come over there right away, arrest the parent. But the child wasn't thinking, you're not staying home by yourself. You're going to foster care. So all that was going on. These kids was making up bold-faced lies just so they could go to a party. Now, somewhere along the line, somebody woke up and said, we can't have these kids dropping a dime on the parents every time parents say no to them. And that's how it was back then. It was years ago. I think you remember that when, here again. And then when a parent is arrested, he could lose his job. Him or her could lose their job, all because this little kid wanted to go somewhere and parents said no.
I've seen, well, first of all, I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to talk about that. But it's even worse than that now, Ron. We got kids that are killing their parents because they aren't buying them a video game. Or they're not getting it. There was a young man that just killed his mom, shot his mom because she, I guess, took his video game away. Right? So I'm gonna have to look up that exact one. But even saying no to your kids, if you can't wait till your child is 13 or 14 or 15 to start saying no. You got to introduce them in that word a lot sooner, right? And set those boundaries, because I'll tell you what, if you don't do it, society will, and they're not going to do it in a way that's loving.
Right.
Okay? So that's why you have to set those boundaries. It's essential that you set boundaries for kids earlier. Now, I'm not exactly old school in terms of spanking and all that. I don't want to hit my child, because I don't want her to have that narrative that hitting is okay. But what I am not going to do is let my child just run over me. I want them to be able to think about the decisions and suffer consequences for what their actions are. So, we've talked about it. You've talked about how you used to do that with your children. Those games disappear, and then you get them back at the end of the year around Christmas time.
Yeah.
There's a ton of different things. I've had people strip down their kids' rooms down to a bed, sheet, and a blanket. And everything goes back, as their behavior gets better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to understand, if you're paying the bills, you're the one that's the breadwinner, or even if you're the parent, you run the house. You have to. Because if they start running the house, that's how entitlement ends up out here. And they think they can just come in and they're just supposed to get the job, or they think that they're supposed to get certain privileges just because they're there. You create the child, you're creating the adult that you're going to have to deal with. And a lot of these parents don't understand that if you give your child that sense of entitlement, they're going to be living with you forever. Because the world don't care that you such and such son, or you got a nice smile, or the world does not love your child. And we know that. A lot of us of color, we already know the world doesn't love our children because they're getting killed on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But we have to understand and prepare our children for this world that they're going to get into. And that's why as adults, we got to make sure that this world is something they can survive in. Right now, school isn't even safe.
Used to be the safest place on earth was schools
Used to be.
and churches.
Yeah. But COVID, I'm telling you, there's some after effects of COVID. I have witnessed kids just leave school when they don't like something. I've witnessed that because they're so used to being at home now. They think that they can just walk off. Some of them.
Mm.
Parents aren't even at home. But parents weren't home when they were at COVID. So the whole thing, man, we got some serious issues that we got to address, including, let's look at those disparages, the difference between how kids are performing of color versus other kids after COVID.
Yeah.
There's been this thing called a educational slide or educational decline. Our kids, of course, are suffering more from that. So we need to understand that not just the educational standards, but also the social skills and things of that nature. That's the only help that some of these kids are getting from the coaches, from the teachers,
Yeah.
from the counselors. They were without that for 2 years. So there's a effect because of that. And we need to kind of react to that. We need to be talking to our kids more, reaching out to these kids more, and letting them know, hey, we care about you, but there's some things that you're going to have to do to be successful.
Yeah.
And it's not negotiable.
And
So
you right on that, because like my kids was growing up, I said, you don't have to go join the gang to find love. I got enough love right here for you. And I would tell them, if they ask you in the gang, you tell me you're in the Gordon gang. And that was good enough.
that's it. That's it. But it's a lot, man. It's a lot going on. I had to get on there. We had to talk about these mass shootings. But then we need to do what we can do about it. Is we can continue to write our legislators, and we can continue to kind of educate ourselves on what do we want to see? What type of legislation do we want to see? There's red flag laws on the book, but what I'm saying is they don't go far enough.
Yeah.
They don't go far. So at least know what's on the book. Find out what those red flag laws are, and commonsensically, let's start having some discussions on what it is that we can do to strengthen those laws, or how we can demand that the Second Amendment be modified so that we can be protected.
Yep.
And we've got to give the culture the ability to participate in the protection of our own kids and our own communities. Because the same thing the thing that we're saying is protecting our freedom is imprisoning us now.
Yeah.
How do we get so backwards? And I have 3 letters: NRA, and the other part is the politicians that are getting paid so well from the NRA. That's it. That's it. And we can go from there. So, what questions we got, Ron? Do we have any questions from anybody?
No, because I got so wound up and there. Let me find my other phone, because usually it's on the other phone that people text. Let me see here if anybody texts anything my way. Oh, here's one that came in. Just it snuck in on Sunday. They were talking about how to protect our daycare, since they out there going in schools and stuff. What's stopping somebody, irate parent, from coming to a daycare? This woman says she is scared to death that's going to happen, that they're going to start choosing, like you said, they choose soft targets.
Yeah. When my baby was in pre-care, even to now, it's a scary thing, right? Because we're trusting these facilities to protect our children. And some now, and I will say, a lot of these facilities have some pretty good measures. The schools are starting to step up. I know my daughter's school has some really good protective measures for inside the building, but it's not where it needs to be in a lot of different, facilities and places. You need to, one thing you can do is check out what the protocol is for an active shooter.
Yeah.
Ask the school or the preschool what the protocol is if an active shooter were to be outside a campus, outside the facility, or inside or somehow to gain access to inside the facility, what protocols are in place. And then we have to educate our kids at home on what to do. I had a situation with my daughter where I don't want to, well, let's just say there was a teacher that wanted to have my baby put the red flag on the door and everybody, because she was always seeking leadership positions. I had to educate the teacher. No, my baby will not be putting or anything on any door in an active shooter situation. That's your job.
Yeah.
All right. My daughter is going to get under something or go hide like the rest of these kids better be doing. And you're going to lock that door, pull the shade down, and put the little whatever sign is on the door. But you have to know what the protocol is, right? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I would have lost my ever-loving mind as a therapist. Yes, we can go crazy too. I would have went crazy if I would have found out in an active shooter situation, my daughter was the one that was supposed to go up and put the sign on the door. Somebody would have had a problem that day.
A big problem.
They would have had a big problem. Yeah, and I know I'm not the smallest guy in the world, so I would have been that problem. You know what I'm saying? That person would have had. But I had to know what the protocol was. I talked to my daughter, hey, what's the protocol in an active shooter situation? We got to have those kind of conversations. You got to know what to do. And unfortunately, and these schools are doing a good job. They're doing the best they can right now. But we have to, as a culture, help these preschools, other schools, communities to, hold folks accountable so they have more to work with. And it really, I know it sounds crazy, but it really does start in the home. It starts in the home, people knowing, and not just, and in our communities, we've had that saying, it takes a village, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can you have a village if you don't communicate? There was a time in the neighborhood I grew up in Michigan, everybody knew everybody. I have to admit, I only know about 3 of my neighbors here in my neighborhood. All 3. All the ones I've seen, we might speak, but how are you going to be a village if you're not even communicating with the villagers?
That's true.
Right. And, we gotta know what's going on. We got to be able to look out for each other. And we've got to be able to, if we see something, we have to be empowered to do something. And right now, we are more of a reactive community than a proactive community. And that's why we're having a lot of these problems. We're reacting to after the situation. And sometimes we're not even reacting effectively. Like in the case of Robb Elementary, I think it's pretty safe to say that they didn't react the way they should have when that situation was going on.
Right.
Right. And that's why so many people are getting fired. So many things are going on, because we have to know how to react in these situations. We should never even have these situations. Because that young man, Salvador, he should have been addressed long before he was able to go get those 2 ARs. But there was no mental health facilities in that area. Right. So one thing is, Abbott said, that he was trying to get access to mental health, but then on one hand, then he cuts funding for mental health and puts it on this wall down here at the border.
Yeah.
Every community that has a school should have access to mental health services and facilities. Every single one of them. If we can send trillions of dollars over to Ukraine, make sure we're good at home first.
Take care of home first.
Some of our kids, we are in a war environment right now, literally. 3 mass shootings, 44 hours. Sounds like a war zone to me. These aren't individual. These are 3 mass shootings in 44 hours. Enough said. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can't say anymore. I know people are thinking it, but I'm just put it to word. And you know, it's a call to action. Don't just talk about it. Do something about it. I'm gonna keep sharing the truth. I'm gonna keep writing. You know, and I might not. I won't even be in the country too much longer, but I'm still gonna be right because I plan on coming back, and I hope there's something to come back to.
You got a good point. Yeah, it'll be something you come back to. We got you.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so because
we
California ain't too far from us, man.
Yeah, well, we got our Navy man going to take care of you because I know
I'm really concerned now.
I had to say that. That's a shameless plug.
That's my brother. Maybe he won't see this episode, but hey, which there's a good movie out here, man. It shows how the Navy in a pretty good light. Devotion. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check out that movie that kind of talks about the history of our folks, our people of color, with the sacrifices they've made and what they've had to do to try to get things right for this country. And I think it was a very good movie, man. And it's also based on a true story. And without telling too much, it is a little bit of it's a tearjerker, but it's definitely a good movie.
Good. Like good movies. So
that have a point.
Yep. All right, Joseph. We're a little early, but that's good because things to do, places to go, and you got to head out tomorrow. And be safe wherever you're going tomorrow.
Will do, man. I gotta do what I gotta do, and hopefully help some folks to deal with the situations they're dealing with. But again, your actions speak so loudly. Can't hear a word you're saying, right? That's how we end this. And boy, sure seems like a lot of action is happening out here with these shootings.
I know.
Tired of hearing the talking, man. We got to start seeing some action. So maybe we can start talking about some things and actually start putting something together from this show in terms of writing and maybe some type of petition or something. So every one of our listeners, maybe we can get a petition together, electronic one or something, or connect with one that we can start leveraging our voice to help make that difference. So impact is not about just conversation. We're about action, right? So this action is this conversation.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, we'll go down that line and we'll tap it.
Yeah, no problem.
All
right, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, Joseph. You take care. Boy, I'm busy. I got other things to do. I got people. I had like 6 phone calls being on the show. Well, they didn't know I was recording anyway, but it's all right. So
yeah, I kept hitting that no button.
Yeah,
myself. So
here's another one. Here's another one. The one that's calling me right now is the one that I said I'm recording the show, and she's calling anyway. You know what that is?
Of course, yeah, I got you. She might have a question, but we'll have to catch you next time.
All right, Joseph. You take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, peace.